Most of it's on us. It's not coaching. That's what Tate Ratledge, captain of this past year's Georgia Bulldogs, SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs, I should add, had to say at the NFL Combine over the weekend. And I want to talk about this for a second or two because I think this is actually a very important statement that Tate Ratledge had just before really completely showing out, by the way, at the Combine. Tate's full quote in response to the question up in Indianapolis was, "Most of it's on us, not it's not the coaching. It's execution, taking the right steps, the little things. I think a lot of success or lack thereof was on us as players, and that starts with us up front, and we take full accountability for that." So the quote, I agree. They definitely, I write about this over on the site. That's what you're seeing on the screen. And I think the biggest thing to me about what Tate is talking about is, yes, it's accurate that the players are not getting the job done or did not get the job done, specifically the offensive line. Now, that's not me piling on them, okay? That's not what's going on. I'm not out calling people out or whatever. They didn't play the way that they needed to in 2024 to win the national championship, okay? They didn't play in 2024 on the offensive line and at quarterback and at receiver. They didn't do that in order to have like a fun season. Like we've seen Georgia and not even in just the 22, 21, 23, but like in 18, in 17, those were all, quote, fun seasons. I don't think the amazing part about what I'm about to say is I believe to be true. I don't think you can really call the SEC championship winning season in 2024 a fun season. And that's what you're feeling from the fan base right now. And that what I want to talk about as far as what Tate's saying here is, I think there's got to be some nuance involved. Execution, the demand of execution is completely coaching. That is what coaching is. And, Kirby Smart cannot go out there and, tackle people for KJ Bolden. He needs KJ Bolden to go do that. Stacey Searles can't, block for Tate Ratledge. Mike Bobo can't throw, thankfully, for the Georgia quarterbacks. That's not their job. Their job is to recruit, acquire, develop, and get players to execute while they're in silver britches. That's the job of the coaches. And look, that job was not great this past season. And yet, they still won the SEC championship. That's number one. Number two, there is an explanation as to why Georgia had such chaos, offensively for sure. When you think about the amount of injuries, Georgia had starters miss games because of injury. Ernest Green, Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson, Carson Beck, the wide receivers for sure. Dylan Bell missed at least one game. You had two off the field arrests that took out two players from Georgia that were, many of us suspected would be there this entire season. They weren't there. Colby Young and Robert Thomas, they weren't there. And then you talk about, running backs constantly being hurt, And this is no judgment on running back in the SEC. And that's a physical and difficult position to play. But that's the reality. That's where we were at with this thing. They were hurt a lot. So instead of having the entire plethora of things that you expected, you didn't have all of those things. And it made it very complicating and challenging for the coaching staff. But even still, no, they didn't do as good a job as they could have. They just didn't. Now, think about this. Think about this. Georgia had one game, where they had 200 yards rushing or more. That's it. One. That is like, as I write in the article, un-Kirby-like. That's just not who they really are. That's not the way Tate Ratledge and company were in 2022 when they were bulldozing everybody, 2023. The other, I have to say too as well, on the offensive line specifically, they had six different starting offensive linemen. 6 different starting offensive lines. There were 3 weeks in a row, Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, 3 conference games, where they didn't have the same starting lineup 3 weeks in a row. I mean, It really was a season of attrition at Georgia. But the point of the coaching staff is to get the absolute most out of the team that they've got. They may have done that, but offensively and at times defensively, think about the Alabama game. There were times, I wouldn't go too far about this with Mississippi State. There were times against Mississippi State where, it seemed like State could throw it when they wanted to or whatever. I don't know. But certainly offensively. But here's what I've got to say about this, okay? This is what I wrote in the story, and I don't think I can say it better than I wrote it. Mike Bobo's job isn't to stop calling plays that run into the pile. The comment section is rife with Mike Bobo hate, which is like so overblown, it's silly. Okay? Why do people call run plays that go right into the pile or right into the middle of the line? Hey, genius. It's because that's the shortest distance to get a yard. You're running 1 yard forward rather than, say, 7 yards to the right or 7 yards to the left to get one thing and waiting for a speed demon from the secondary or linebacker to come up and make a play. You need 1, 2, 3 yards. That's the way you do it. Mike Bobo's job isn't to stop calling plays that run into the pile, as people call it. His job is to give his players as many chances as possible to A, not have the pile there to begin with, which is the offensive line, B, break through the pile, which are the running backs, or C, audible out of that call, which is a relationship between the offensive play caller, or the offensive coordinator in this case, and the quarterback. All of these things are available to the coaches. Those are all things that in 2023, those weren't really challenges at Georgia. I mean, think about how hard it was for them to score on Florida in 2024 versus 2023. Think about how much more challenging it was for them to score. They scored 34 against Tennessee this year in Athens, or 31, excuse me. I can't remember how many scored against Tennessee on the road in 2023, but it was a lot. It was 38. Georgia didn't really have issues scoring as much in 2023. 48, 45, 24, 49, 27, 51, 37, 43, 30, 52 against a top 10 team, 38 against the top. I'm skipping the ranked teams. Forget all that now. 52, 38, 31, lost to Alabama, and then scored 63. Look, a lot of this is the players. A lot of this is the coaches. A lot of it is lack of execution. Okay. But all of that at the end of the day, this only always comes back to the coaches. Yes, now you can fire the players. It used to be in college sports, someone like me would be like, well, you can't fire the players. Well, they kind of can now. So it will always come down to the coaches. But I think, Tate's not going to run down anybody, first of all. It is true that the execution was not where it needed to be, but that needs to be addressed in the following ways: in the acquisition of talent department and on the practice fields, in that area, because your development and your schemes and all that, the injuries were a real problem at Georgia this year. In the quarter century I've dealt with covering Georgia. I mean, something makes me think in 2003 that Georgia had a lot of issues with injury on the offensive line. I think they just weren't good offensively in 2003, and that was what that was. David Green got sacked, I think, 40 times. It was some crazy number. But this, Ernest Green gets healthy, like that will be a big deal. Because if Ernest Green plays the same way he played in 2023, the guy started 14 games for Georgia or whatever it was in 2023. You look at the starting lines on the offensive line, Georgia had some injuries. I mean, they had a first-round draft pick that didn't play, the majority of the season. But there was consistency along the offensive line. It was pretty much the same people. This year, I mean, it just seemed like it was all over the place at times with all of that. So all of that makes a difference for sure. But look, make no mistake about it. This needs to look cleaner in the fall. Georgia starts practice by the time I'm recording this, Georgia starts practice in like 9 days. Okay. This is an important spring. And all springs are important, but you've got a new quarterback. You've got transition at running back. You've got transition on the offensive line. You have newcomers who are supposed to be explosive in the passing game. You need to get Dylan Bell's mind back to where he was at the end of 2023. I mean, dude balled out in 23, period. Against the Carolina, against Tennessee. He didn't seem like himself a lot of 2024. I have immense expectations for Dylan Bell. This guy looks like the real deal. I've seen it way too many times. But as receivers, they just were not consistent. And none of it quite went right. Whereas in 23, a lot of it went right. We saw back-to-back years at Georgia of very limited offenses in 2019 and 2020. Once Georgia got the right things in place in 21, which is to say, and even with JT, once they got explosion from Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, once they narrowed in on which quarterback they were going with, and did they understand the system of Todd Monken, once all of the, A.D. Mitchell in 21, you had, someone had to replace George Pickens there, but Georgia had a lot to work with offensively. Whereas this season, who was the Kenny McIntosh? Which running back was taking it the distance? Is that going to be Dwight Phillips in the near future? Like, I've seen Dwight Phillips, okay? Bro can run. He can flat out flash and go. He didn't play a lot this past season. Is that what the future holds for him? So there's all sorts of stuff. But in terms of Tate saying, hey, essentially, I'll read the quote, but I know what he's saying. I mean, he's saying, hey, look, it's on the players because I don't want the coaches eating it. And that's and the coaches say it's on us, by the way, and the players should say it's on them. Most of it's on us. It's not coaching. No, that's not completely true. Some of it was coaching, okay, and that's okay, by the way. We have to be honest with our audience. Tate doesn't, but I do. And as an audience, y'all matter to me, and it can't be that we are disingenuous with you. It may well have been most on the players. I don't know. But to say it's not coaching, no, some of it's coaching. Because coaching is not just screaming and yelling. Coaching is relationships. Coaching is, development. Coaching is all sorts of is evaluation, development, retention, acquisition. Again, relationships, execution, is all of those things. You have to have the ability to talk to your players in a real way. But I got to say, this was a tough season at Georgia. And they won the league. This was a tough season at Georgia. It was hard from the start, basically. And that is up to the coaching staff to handle from here on out. They don't have Carson Beck, Tate Ratledge, and so forth, these older players to rely on. They don't. They're not there on offense. So someone is going to have to be the bad guy in this case and get, or not even the bad guy. That's the wrong way to put it. Everybody always thinks that coaching is screaming. That's part of coaching. That's not the only tool in the tool kit. So look, I think Tate has earned himself a lot of money with his combine appearance, but some of this was coaching, and it needs to get better. And I think all the coaches would say that. Thanks for watching.